felt that. I mean, it's very simple. It's the simplest way I know. You know, you can say it's friction or whatever, but it is a force field. I used to do workshops when I lived in India for a few years. After that, I did a workshop called Energy Shmenergy. You know, and it was teaching people to see auras, to feel them. We have these energy fields around our body, and we can manipulate it in many ways. Now, the Chinese wrote about this 4,000 years ago in a document called the Neijing, or the Yellow Emperor's Classic. Now, this was 4,000 years ago, and you can read it today, and it sounds like it's all relevant today. It was a whole system that was fully evolved and fully formed. So this must have been passed down by mouth the generations before they wrote it down then. And you know, I can speak a lot about Chinese medicine. That would incorporate lecture after lecture. But I'm going to give you just the basic imprint of the way the Chinese saw energy, what I call energy, anatomy, and physiology. Okay? And basically, according to them, when we are formed, we're formed by a negative and positive pole that they call yin and yang, the male principle and the female principle, or the egg and the sperm. Now, these two magnetic forces join and create something greater than the two forces. It's this energetic, negative, positive pole that will eventually evolve into our bodies. And they have, you know, a number of chapters of reading how this happens. But suffice it to say that energy begins by this joining of the male and female energies, which creates a magnetic vortex. And the yin and the yang start to come together, which is the energy field. Either cannot be separated from the other. Does yin and yang resonate to people? Okay. So the yin is the female, it's the dark side of the mountain, it's receptivity, it's quiet. You know, the yang is the sun, it's the light side of the mountain, it's aggressive, it's moving out. And what I would like in healing, we're going to go back to this later. The yang is Western medicine, the yin is Chinese medicine. If the two can come together, we have a wonderful healing system at our disposal. But what the Chinese say is when we form the energy that innervates us, it comes from three sources. It comes from the air we breathe, and they call that Da Qi. Qi is energy. It comes from the food, the herbs, from the earth, and they call that Gu Qi. Don't laugh. And it comes from relationships. And the Chinese medicine, and that's called Shenshi. So these are the three ways that we can bring energy into our body from the outside and make it part of us. The dachi, and if we notice ourselves, we'll notice very often when we're tense, we stop breathing. Most meditation techniques are about breath. Contemplate your navel, watch it go up and down. So the way we bring energy in from the air is to let that energy in the air, that is called different things in different cultures. It could be prana, chi, ki, and allow it to do its work in the body, because that air not only is energy, but it nourishes every cell of the body and gets rid of the waste. So I would like to give you a simple, what I call my 1:4:2 ratio breathing technique. And it's very simple, and it's what you're comfortable with. It's breathing in at the ratio, in other words, let's say for the count of 4. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath in 4 times that for the count of 16. So you breathe in for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 16, and exhale for the count of 8. So it's a relationship of 1:4:2. If that's not getting enough air, you can breathe in for the count of 8 and multiply it that way. The idea to me is this is a very simple way when we're not centered, when we can use the energy and connect to dachi, to bring the air into the body by holding it for that count of 4, whatever it is. We're letting that oxygen we just took in, the prana, go to the cells of the body and do what they have to do. And then we're going to exhale the stale matter. So this is something you can do wherever. And I think, bringing the energy from the air is the easiest. Gucci is bringing the energy from the food. All of herbal medicine is from the earth. Herbs do not do the effect. They support your body to do it, just as food supports your body not only to metabolize, but to do every biological process we have, including build immunity. So if we eat healthy foods, if we stay away from the artificial ingredients, if you drink plenty of water so the system can filter properly and the liver and the kidneys can work effectively, we're going to support our health. We'll talk more about herbs later, and we can go through some specific herbs that might be helpful. The Shenshi is a little different. And I'd like to tell you a little story. This is an experiment from years and years ago. At the University of Miami, there were some graduate students doing studies of food and cholesterol, and they used rabbits. And they would feed these rabbits, like one group got good, healthy lettuce and whatever rabbits usually eat. The other group, they were feeding lard, stuff that was really known to create a lot of cholesterol and thicken the arteries. And basically, when they went through the results of the experiments, they found in almost every group, they got the results they anticipated. That the groups that were fed these really high-fat, saturated fat diets had higher cholesterol, would develop more hardening of the arteries, but there was one group that actually was fed that diet and lowered the cholesterol. And they tried the experiment again with the same results. So they said, I wonder what the experimenters are doing. And they interviewed the graduate students who were working with the rabbits, and they found the graduate student who was working with the group that had the opposite results of what they expected. And they said, what do you do? Are you feeding the diet that you said? Oh, yeah. What else do you do? Oh, I love rabbits. I cuddle them. I stroke them. They tried that as the active variable in the experiment to follow. And they found that those people, this is Shenshi. Shenshi is the relationship energy that we get through relationships. We get through our relationships with others. Most of us, especially in cancer or diseases where you feel that you're being a burden, it's very hard to ask for support. I'd like to introduce you to a concept of the battlefield and the garden, which is the Western way of dealing with disease as opposed to the more Eastern way of dealing with disease. The Western approach is more the battlefield. It's approaching disease as an enemy that's trying to get into the inner sanctum, and we need to boost our defenses in order to keep it at bay. So we take whatever weaponry we can and target the enemy. One concept is antibiotics for bacteria. If we know what the bacteria is, we can target it with something that will kill it. The fact that there is collateral damage and some good bacteria get killed with it goes with the territory. There's always collateral damage on the battlefield. From a point of view of cancer, we see the enemy as the cancer cells. And the battlefield approach is to target those enemies with whatever clusters of weaponry we can get together and kill them, whether it's chemotherapy or a combination of chemo. And again, this isn't bad medicine, it's just one medicine. That we need to see that the body is in a constant state of equilibrium. And when an invader is attacking, it's good to know that we have the battlefield and the arsenal available to us. But from a point of view of an Eastern person, the fact that the germ or the invader or the cancer infiltrated to begin with is a sign of weakness, a sign that the garden was in need of repair or in need of nourishment. The Chinese metaphor of healing, rather than a battlefield, is really considered more of a garden. If you nurture your garden, you tend to it, you give it the right amount of nutrients, it gets sun, it gets the proper water, the garden will be naturally resistant to disease. If something happens, if it develops a disease in a plant, we can take an insecticide and we can we can integrate the two medicines. But the key being, we need to keep the garden in good health so we're naturally resistant to disease. That we're operating more optimally. And when we operate optimally, not only are we healthier, but we're more vibrant. We can celebrate life. And that to me is really, and many people get illness. A friend of mine wrote a book called All Sickness is Homesickness. If we can use the illness as a way to come back to ourselves and finding out how we can better nourish ourselves, how we can take better care of ourselves and connect, then the disease in some way is really a gift. The idea isn't, at all costs defeat the enemy. It's target the enemy but nourish thyself. And there was a cute story where, God created Adam and Eve, and he was happy. And then Adam would say, God, what is it? It's Eve, she's got a headache, I'll talk to her. God, what is it, Eve? Adam, he's a real pain in the, so it went on and on. And then they had like 400 kids, I think, according to the Bible. And God was having a nervous breakdown. So he calls an emergency meeting of his ministers and he says, I created a monster, they won't leave me alone. Where should I hide? So the first says, hey, why don't you go to Everest? I'll never go there. He says, you don't know what I created, they're going to go there. The other one says, what about the moon? They're going to get there. And he has a big smile and he's like, what is it? I know where they'll never look. I'm going to hide inside man himself. And so we're really trying to create a space for healing where we're connected with ourselves, we're connected with a higher force, and we're being pragmatic and educated. We're making the best choices from an educated point of view, and we're making the best choices from an energetic point of view. So Chinese medicine is much more, but what I'd like to do, I think that was a good introduction to energy medicine. But I think most of what will happen tonight will be question and answers. And it can be about herbs, it can be about cancer, it can be about Lyme disease, it can be about acupuncture. So let me open this up. I think that was just a general intro.